Okay, hope everybody had a good Hanukkah.
Yes.
And let's start with, I'll just say that this page was rough only because the rabbis were playing with with verses from the text that they were using as proof texts, but to really understand them, that you have to play around with the meaning of the words, and the literal translation didn't really help. And I think Steinsaltz really didn't help people trying to follow along in the English in most cases, because his translations were too close to the contextual translation in scripture, as opposed to explaining how to read it from the rabbi's point of view. But we can go over that. I don't know if anybody else has any specific questions they want to start with. If not, let's just go through the text. I just gotta share screen. There we go. Acrobat. Okay, so we began, this page began with Reish Lakish making a statement. And it was based because we ended the last page talking with this verse, but it was talking about in the context of rain. Here, he uses the verse to talk about a student. If Reish Lakish Amar, Im ra'ita talmid shelimudo kashe alav kevarzel, his studies are as hard to him as iron, bishvil mishnato she'eina stura alav, because in his Mishnah learning, that is the first level of learning, isn't organized before him. It's like it's from the word sidur, order. It's not ordered before him, meaning he doesn't really know it well enough to be able to go on to the next level. And his proof text is what is a proof text we had before about rain, but here it's in the context of learning. V'hu lo panim kilkal. So the way I translated, I suggested it could be better understood, is v'hu, for him, this student, lo, that his studies are not clear regarding the panim. The panim is the surface. Here, panim is face, but it also represents the surface. His studies on the surface are kilkal. They're not clear. They're not well understood. So what's the remedy? My takante yarbe b'shiva. He should increase his sitting, literally, but yeshiva, as we know, is another term for a place of study. So he should really increase his studying, right? I mean, which makes sense. If the student is having a hard time learning, then the solution is, you know what, go back to the basics and really learn your basics, and then you'll be better off. So you got to spend more time learning. The verse, though, that offers this solution, v'chayalim yegaber v'yitron hechsher chachma, it's true that if you looked in the JPS, I think they translate it this way or something similar. He must increase his strength, which I guess you can understand. If chayalim, chayal is strength. Chayal is also a soldier, obviously a strong person. So increasing his strength, meaning, he's got to study more. But based on the translation following in the next example, chayalim can also be understood here as soldiers or legions. So what he has to do is he goes to the yeshiva, he goes to sit and learn with his fellow students, because we've already seen that. I think it was on page 6, where we learned that the way to study is in groups, is with a partner. So he has to sit more and learn with his fellow students. The chayalim yegaber, the fellow students will help strengthen him. Vayitron hechsher chachma, and because wisdom or um, Yitron, which means more of. The more you do, the more preparation. That's hechsher from the word kasher. The more preparation brings wisdom. Um, and even all the more so, im mishnato sturalo meikara. It'd be even more true if he knew his basics, his ABCs, from the very beginning. Now we have another, which is very interesting. Oh, and then we have an example. This is what the rabbis of that time would do. Ki hada reish lakish hava misader matnita arba'in oops, zmanim keneged arba'im yom shenitna Torah. So he would study 40 times. He would review his material 40 times, uh, corresponding to the 40 days that it took for Torah to come down with Moses. Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was his study partner. Rabbi Yochanan was the greater rabbi, but he was a study partner of Reish Lakish. And before he would sit down with with Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish would review his material. Rav Ada bar Ava, misader matnite esrin ve'arba zmanim. He would do it 24 times, according to the number of books in scripture. Va'ayal lekamei de Rava, before he would go before his study partner and teacher Rava. Okay, so that's the way to do it. Now Rava has a different approach. He says if the guy's having trouble, imarayit talmid shalimudo kashe alav kabarzel. Maybe it's not the student's fault. Maybe b'shvil rabo she'eno masbir lo panim, because the teacher. Now here, this is interesting. It's not the teacher's a bad teacher. It's like a psychological thing. The teacher's not masbir lo is to like show a pleasant countenance. So the teacher's being really nasty to him. And here. Now here, I think the way that to understand the way Rava sees this is that he's actually changing the words a little bit. The teacher, that is the teacher, lo, and I would say it shouldn't be translated as lo lamed aleph, which means no, but lamed vav, lo as to him. And the teacher, to him, the student, panim kalkal, his face is, here he translates not wetted, it's disturbed. It's how did I'm trying to remember how I translated
Distressed.
distress. That's better. Right. So his face is distressed. He's giving him a bad face. And I'll tell you from real experience, my kids all went to the day school, and my three boys, especially Moshe, who was a very good Talmud student, when they got done with the day, they never wanted to look at Talmud again because their teacher was so horrible. He was a very knowledgeable teacher, but he was so mean to the students, and he would terrify them and yell at them and belittle them if they didn't get the answer right. And even though Moshe was good at it, he hated it because he sat there terrified in class every day, and who wants that experience? So so Rav, I think, is saying the teacher has a responsibility at some level to be open-minded, welcoming, friendly to the students, making it positive. So what's the remedy?
Back to the previous paragraph, some of us would have been very happy to have our students review material twice.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, sometimes it's the student and sometimes it's the teacher. Although the remedy here for Rava is yarbe alav re'im. He should increase the number of his friends. Re'im here is as friend. We'll see re'ah can be translated different ways, but here it's friends. Shne'emar v'chayalim yigaber. Here clearly chayalim are people, soldiers. But in the sense of his friends should increase or give him strength, meaning that they should go and either advocate for him in front of the teacher or speak on his behalf. So even for Rava, the student has some responsibility. Maybe if you were a little more prepared, maybe if you showed interest in class, he wouldn't be as angry at you and make you feel bad. So there's still some responsibility on the student, but it's just interesting to see here two different approaches. One is the focus on the student, one is more of the focus on the teacher.
Now, I wonder if increasing his friends couldn't also be interpreted to mean that he should discuss more with his friends
Yeah, yeah, that could be too. They're right.
rather than necessarily just sending his friends to intercede with the teacher.
Right. Yeah. So that's Rashi's explanation. But you're right. That could be it too. That if he almost the same solution. If he studies with his friends more, and he's that will help him increase his preparation, and then the teacher will be more pleased with him and won't be so hard on him.
I
I
used
got it as more of a like a social aspect to learning, making a better environment.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Making an environment that's conducive to learning. You know, if we get,
Yeah.
you know, especially compared to things right now with e-learning and stuff like that, seeing has watching kids that go, you know, maybe they're good students in the classroom, but not so good on e-learning and vice versa, the different social aspect to how they study and prepare.
Yeah, that's a very good
changes
point,
things
right?
a lot.
And especially now, all you parents with kids in school really know how difficult that is without the social element.
I used to tell my students that you know, this comes from a different tradition, but it's important. You found a teacher. Now you need to find a study partner.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then clearly that's yeah, that's what the rabbis would be encouraging.
Yeah, I think that's from Pirkei Avot.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the tradition of Notre Dame students.
Right.
But sometimes it has a good effect on them to tell them.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, okay, we continue. So we're in a new section. Ve'amar Rabbi Ami, my dichtiv, but again, we're still the same, we're still going with looking at proof text and trying to understand their connection to the situation. Im yishoch hanachash belo lachash ve'ein yitron leval halashon. So what's this verse mean? Now, the verse literally is if the snake bites without charming, without whispering, obviously the snake charmer isn't doing his job. The snake charmer, there's no benefit, there's no advantage to the snake charmer. So what's this mean? Or how is he going to imply it? ואם ראית דור שהשמיים משטחים כנחושת מלהוריד טל ומטר בשביל לוחשי לחישות שאין בדור. Now here, again, the playing around is Yishoch hanachash sounds a little bit like mishatchin kinechoshet, which is that the sky is colored as corroded, rather rust. That's right. Mishatchin is to rust, so it's rusted like bronze. Okay, I mean you can see they're playing because usually I don't know. I mean, I guess a bronze colored sky would mean that there's no rain coming, but it seems to me that, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's true. Maybe they're always in places where it doesn't rain, it's bronze colored. But the idea here is that it's not raining. And so therefore, where's the lochashe lechishot? Now he translates here as, well, lochash does mean to whisper. Those who he translates lack of those who whisper quiet prayers in the generation. So I guess the analogy is the snake biting you is a negative, the rain not coming is a negative, and so therefore it happens because the person who speaks, the person who's speaking to the snake charmer isn't doing his job, and the prayer person, the prayer leader, isn't doing his job. I also wonder if it's not a little bit like theurgy, a mystical theurgy here, where as you need to find somebody who has the skill, who can invoke the heavens to do the will on earth. And that's what lo chashe lichishot means here, that they're whisper, they're what is it, the horse whisperer? So this is the God whisperer, not doing his job. Later on, we'll meet a God whisperer, Choni the Hama'agal, who has the power to force God to bring rain. But in this case, but he said in case that people who are not using their words properly to bring about the rain. So my takanatan, Yelchu etzel mi sheyodea lechosh. So you got to go to the person who knows the skills, who has the skill to say the prayers in the right way to bring the rain. Dichtiv yagid alav re'o. So here again, depends on how you translate each of these words. So Steinsaltz translated as go to somebody who's able to pray, because he's understanding re'o as noise, sound. Usually re'ah is a colleague of some kind. So Art Scroll had it that you should go to the person who knows how to pray properly. But Steinsaltz understands it is the way the person is praying. Again, there's no advantage to the speaker. If he's got these skills to speak properly to the heavens and bring the rain, and he doesn't do it, then what good is he? Now you have two consequences, or I should say, I guess, less than positive consequences. Because if he does speak properly and the rain comes, great. But what happens if the im lachash v'lo nana? Okay, so you go to the guy who knows how to say these prayers properly, and nothing happens. My takante yilech etzel chasid shebador v'yarbe alav b'tfilah shene'amar v'yitzav aleha b'mafgia. Again, reading these two verses, juxtaposing these two verses from the book of Job, because this one is the previous verse. So what do you do? If you go to this person who supposedly has the skills and you're not answered, the remedy is, well, then you go to the Chasid Bador, the righteous person, the pious person of the generation. I think, and then the word here, mafgia, which means to in this case, to implore. Lifgoa is to meet somebody, to entreat somebody. And very often it's seen, at least in rabbinic practice, as a synonym for prayer. I think what it's saying here is that there are people who have certain skills, praying skills, that are heard in heaven, but it's not enough to just have those skills. You also have to be the chassid. You have to have the inner ability, the inner qualities to move heaven on the communities, on behalf of the community.
I have a question about this. We're going through, and it's putting the responsibility for bringing this important rain on one or two people. But in the preceding study, it talked about the failure of the community.
Oh, good, right.
So I don't quite understand why we're all of a sudden making it one person's responsibility to bring the rain. And even if this is a perfect person who does it all correctly and is a righteous person, God doesn't have to answer. I mean, it's making some correlations that are, to me, a bit troubling.
No, that's really good. That's really good, because you have two different approaches here. We've seen an approach that says the community is the one who is responsible, right? We saw that if rain doesn't come, it's because the community isn't acting properly. So obviously the community has to be doing the right thing. Here you have a different approach, which makes even more sense, the idea of theurgy here, that is in provoking or causing the divine to act, because that's definitely a strain that you see in Jewish thought, especially in mystical thinking, that it's really up to the certain special individuals. So you have two different approaches here. One is community based, and one is that special individuals have power to motivate the heavens. And Ben, I think you're right. I think there are two different ways of looking at it.
I
So
would feel more comfortable thinking that this righteous person who knows the prayers correctly has the potential, but he can't force God to do anything. I mean, God chooses. It's still like, what do you mean? This guy says it and God just says, okay, here you go.
well, wait till we get to the stories about Chonia Magal. Not only does he get God to bring the rain, or the heavens to bring the rain, but he forces it to modify. The rain starts coming. He says, no, that's too hard. We need softer rain. So we
Okay,
have
that's
stories of these special people.
well, true. But let's
and-
talk about human arrogance.
Yes. Okay. Well, and we'll get to that in a moment. See, so that
Okay.
it says right here, if the prayers are, if you find a guy who knows how to do these prayers and it's not answered, you got to go to the holy man of the generation. Then you go, but whoa, but wait a minute. There's the other possibility. V'im lachash ve'al tabi ado umegista ato alav mevi af le'olam. What if you go to the guy and he's successful, and then he's really prideful about it? He's very, as you said, he becomes very arrogant. Now that's even worse, because he brings anger into the world. And then Steinsaltz brings this verse. And truth is, the book of Job is very difficult to translate. Ed Greenstein wrote a new translation of Job, which is just amazing, because he tells you, as he's translating it, he's using philology, he's using comparison with other ancient languages to try to make sense, because the Hebrew doesn't always make sense. So that I don't even in context here, the verse, Mikneh af al olah, the cattle also concerning the rainstorm. I didn't even know, even in context, what it was talking about. But the way that they're using it here is the term mikneh as acquisition, like koneh, to buy something. Mikneh af, he acquires anger al olah, on his exalting himself, lifting himself up. So that's problematic too. Yeah, you're right. You've got to be a very special person to invoke these favors from God and not become overly impressed with yourself.
I got from this
yeah.
section, it came off as considering we just went from like the responsibility being on the community, and this switches to it being on a couple of people. I saw it as a not necessarily anti like Messiah, but sort of you can't put too much responsibility on somebody, because then they're gonna act like they're the Messiah or something, and it's not. Yeah. We can't encourage people to fall down. Lead them into temptation, for lack of a better phrase, kind of thing.
That's good. I mean, I think you see here a tension. There's this underlying tension. On the one hand, the rabbis exalt themselves to a very high place. Scholars, because of their commitment to Torah study, because of their and Torah study gives them a greater holiness than your average run-of-the-mill person. They have powers, they have gifts that other people don't have. But on the other hand, you see throughout, and this is actually one of the things we're going to talk about in the next talk about social criticism. The rabbis are very aware of that, and there's a tension there that, you know what, rabbis can be really big jerks because of their self-aggrandizement and their arrogance. So you have this tension between this belief that certain people are very special because they engage in the holiest activity, Torah study. On the other hand, they abuse it, and we've already seen this too, right? We saw it before, and where they said that it can be dangerous Torah study if you don't do it properly. So there's this tension there. There's no doubt that the rabbis recognize the dangers, and yet there's this pull, and we see it probably in all societies, where the hero, the special person, the Harry Potter is, can solve the problems. And as you said, obviously Messiah character. Okay, well, here we go onto with this notion of causing anger through pride. Wait, no, who was texting me? Somebody for class? No. Okay. Whoop, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. So Rava continues. Rava Amar, Shnei Talmidei Chachamim sheyoshvim be'ir echad ve'ein nochin ze lezeh b'halacha mitkanim be'af uma'alin oto. You have two Torah scholars who live in one place, and they're not respectful to each other. They're not, not nice. They're not courteous to one another regarding halachic matters. It creates anger to rise up, and using the same verse, mikneh af al olah. So here you have again, immediately right after after we learn that you go to the special people in each generation, we find out that, you know what, sometimes there's two scholars in one community and they're not nice to each other. They're not respectful. And that creates problems. That's not pleasing to heaven. And now we go back to Reish Lakish. Amar Reish Lakish, im yishoch hanachash belo lachash ve'ein yitron leval halashon. So what's this verse mean? He's got another solution to it. Latid lavo mitkaptzim uvaot kol chayot etzel hanachash ve'omrim lo. Okay, so here he's got a little parable. So in the future, all the animals are going to get together, and they're going to be talking about, what they do. And ve'omrim lo ari dores ve'ochel. A lion, when he eats his prey, he mauls his prey and then he eats it. And the wolf tears his prey and eats it. So when they cause their harm, they're mauling, they're tearing the animals apart. Okay, but they're eating it at least. Ata, you the snake, you go and you bite people and they die, or bite animals and they die, and that's it. Obviously, in a lot of cases, the snake bites his prey and eats it. But in this case, why you're biting these people and you don't eat the person? You just cause harm. And his response is, Amar lahem ve'ein yitron leval lashon. Again, using the second half of the verse, you're talking to me that there's no benefit to my biting and letting the person die. Well, there's no benefit to the Ba'al HaLashon, but here understanding Ba'al Lashon as a Lashon Hara, a person who speaks ill of other people. Hey, in the human world, they have slanderers. They don't get any benefit from slandering other people, but they just go around and slander, and they cause all this harm. So what are you bothering me for? And here, Amar Rabbi Ami, Ein tfilato shel adam nishma'at ela im kein mesim nafsho bechapo. Prayers are only heard if a person puts his entire soul, he really puts it on the line, puts his whole life on the line when he prays. Shnei amar nisa levavenu el kapayim. He translates it here as, let us lift up our heart with our hands. So wait a minute. Going to be a contradiction. Ini, is that so? Veha okim Shmuel amora alei vidarash. But wait a minute, Shmuel taught this. Shmuel's another. Shmuel is actually the first generation of Amoraim, Gemara teacher, scholars. He says, "Vayifatuhu befihem uvilshonam yichasu lo." This is the verse from Psalms, right? V'libam lo nachonimo v'lo ne'emnu bivrito. So in this case, it's speaking very negatively about individuals. They beguiled God with their mouth. They lied to God with their tongue. Their heart was not steadfast with God. They weren't faithful to the covenant. And yet, right afterwards, it says, V'hu rachum yechaper avon. Nevertheless, God is full of compassion and forgives iniquity. So Rabbi Ami is suggesting only if you really put your whole soul into your praying, does God pay attention? Does it work? But here, Shmuel points out, even when they don't, they lie, they're unfaithful, you know what? God is still full of compassion and forgives iniquity, doesn't destroy. God accepts the prayers, even if they're insincere. So the answer is lokashia, kan biyachid, kan bitzibur. We're talking about two different situations. One situation, we're talking about an individual. If the individual prays without sincerity, the individual is required to pray with sincerity for his prayers to be heard. But in the community, even if they are not prayed with full sincerity, because they're praying in community, that's enough for the prayers to be heard. Amar Rabbi Ami again. Ein geshamim yordim ele b'shvil ba'alei amana. That rain falls only due to people of faith, to faithful people. Shene Amar, and here's the verse also from Psalms. Emet me'eretz titzmach v'tzedek mishamayim nishkaf. Truth springs out of the earth, and righteousness has looked down from the heaven. So, as Steinsaltz explains, when truth springs up from the earth, when you pray faithfully, then righteousness, that is, God will act righteously and send down rain. And then Rabbi Ami continues, V'amar Rabbi Ami, Bo ur'ei kama gidolim ba'alei amana. See how great are people of faith. Minayin, where do we learn this from? And then they have this mechulda uvor, which according to Rashi, this is a story that I guess it's probably one of those fables that people were very familiar with, because they don't explain it here in the Gemara, but Rashi does, and it's understood that that again, the story is told here by Steinsaltz, that a young man had saved a girl who had fallen into a pit, that's a bore, and after rescuing her, they swore to remain faithful to each other, and they declared the pit and a passing marten, that's the hulda, sometimes translated as a rat or a weasel, as their witnesses. As time went by, the young man forgot his vow and married somebody else. They had children, and both children died tragically, one by falling into a pit and the other was bitten by the marten. Their unusual deaths led the young man to realize his error, and he returned to the first woman. So he was faithful in the end, I guess. Okay, I guess. And if the person who realizes that the pit and the marten are kind of your guardians to keep you faithful and follows the rules, how much the more so should you have faith in the Holy One to follow through on consequences, I guess.
This example leaves out what happens to the second woman.
I know, that's what I was thinking, like, well, he was faithful, yeah, to the girlfriend number one, but the wife who lost the two children, how did she benefit from all this?
Yeah.
I thought that was a little, but sometimes these parables are not exactly perfect. Yeah, but okay, so here's Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, kol hamatzdik et atzmo milmata, matzdikin alav hadim milmala. Everybody who acts, he translates it here as exacting. The term matzdik is obviously from the word tzedek, so causing to act righteously, and in this case, he understands it. Steinsaltz's understanding is you're being very careful, right? You're being careful and cautious to act as righteously as possible. If you do that in this world, then the heavens on the day of judgment, when it's time for you to be judged above, they will treat you in the same exact. Matzdikim alav hadim milmala, that they treat you the same way. He translates here, truth springs out of the earth and righteousness looks down from heaven. That if you act righteously here, heaven's is also going to be very exacting towards you in this world. And we'll get to a moment what we're talking about. Rabbi Chia bar Avin Amar Rav Huna Mehacha. Where did you get this idea? V'chiriratecha evratecha. Your wrath, God's wrath, is according to your yirah. You know, yirah can be translated as a reverence, so something pious, and not just the fear. So God's wrath is according to the reverence that a person has towards God. Okay, so what's saying that the Reish Lakish Amar Mehacha Pagata etzas ve'osei tzedek. Pagata here is before we saw the word paga as entreating, meaning prayer, but here pagata can mean to attack. Pagata etzas ve'osei tzedek. He translated it as you took him away, who joyfully performed righteousness. Bidrachecha is karucha. In your ways, he remembered you, he considered you. Hein ata katsafta v'necheta, you, God, were angry. V'necheta, for we sinned. Bahem olah v'nivashea. In them, how do you translate? Oh, or maybe it's, oh, no, olam, not olah. Bahem olam v'nivashea. Through them, the world, and we are saved. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, kol hashtameach b'yisurin sheba'in alav mevi Yeshua le'olam. Shene'amar bahem olam v'nivashea. So here the Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, who's ever joyful in suffering that comes upon him brings salvation to the world. So here are two, again, interesting theological notions that you see in rabbinic teachings. Again, all trying to answer that question: why do the righteous suffer in this world? Why, Tov viralo, the good person who bad things happen to, and the wicked person who good things happen to. And the responses here are that, well, Rabbi Yochanan's response is basically, yeah, there's a double standard. If you are careful about the way you act in this world, and you really act righteously, and you're very careful and exacting in your righteousness, the heavens are going to treat you the same way. So you go out of line just a little bit, you're going to suffer. But it's okay, because in the next world, you're clean. You've cleaned out, that you have no deficits to pay up. Rabbi Reish Lakish had a slightly different, a different approach, which is when good people, righteous people suffer in this world, there is a cosmic value to it because it benefits the world. We're saved because there are righteous people who suffer, and their suffering, in a sense, saves the rest of us who also do bad things, but we would be, totally crushed and destroyed for our behavior, but for these righteous people who take it upon themselves and suffer for us. Again, going back what we saw before, what Judy was noting, that you have this idea of one person being responsible for everybody, but it is a theme that we see throughout Jewish sources. I don't know if I would say it's the most prevalent, but it's definitely there.
So like you were saying and Judy was saying before, when I read it as a perspective of, we can't make one person or just a few people exceptionally good at anything, otherwise it turns into being messianic.
Mm-hmm.
And this notion of, if we have one person who's righteous and suffers for us to save us, that very easily turns into something bad, because you leave that to stew for a while, you end up with the Catholic Church. And one guy dies and it turns into a whole other, you know, we got one thing and now we have a whole other religion that's been taken away from it, you know. So I think that's where it sort of comes from. You can't let one person or one group of people get too ahead, because then you get this mob mentality behind it, and it becomes a distraction. So we have to keep everybody very equal, even if they're exceptionally good or righteous, until we can reach a higher state of mental being where we're not going to turn them into somebody that they aren't, you know.
Okay.
That's where I see it, you know.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit hard for us because Christianity took this idea and ran with it as kind of the central notion that with Jesus' suffering and his sacrifice atoning for the sins of the world, we think of it as a Christian idea, but it does run through Judaism. I mean, the martyrology that we recite on Yom Kippur, people have different explanations for it, but I think that there's no doubt that we read the martyrology of the death of these 10 sages because we're seeking different ways of atonement, different approaches towards atonement. And one approach is we want to remind God, you know, these special people died in their greatness, and their death should atone for us common people's wrongdoings. And the death of righteous people has that power. It's not, again, maybe it's not something we're comfortable with, but I definitely think that it's in some of the rabbinic teachings, and I think that's what they're suggesting here.
I was reminded of two things reading through this. The first goes back a little bit, but it's the 36 righteous people.
Yeah, right. The Lamed Vav. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other, I think, comes from Christian scripture. It's from one to whom much is given, much is asked.
Yeah.
So if these people are especially talented in some way, then they're really asked as well to.
Yeah, right. And on that famous, famous scripture of Spider-Man, right? What does the guy say to his Spider-Man? His uncle says,
"With great power comes great responsibility."
There you go. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So it's
Uncle
that
Ben and Bruce Wayne's parents are the only people that will stay dead in comic books. Everybody else comes back.
Oh, okay. Okay, wait, where were we? Oh, here we go. Oh, here we have another teaching about rain. All right. Amar Reish Lakish, the heavens are closed up. We've seen this verse before from Deuteronomy chapter 11. The teaching is, the verse teaches that when the heavens are closed up from bringing down dew and rain, this is similar to a woman who has the pangs of labor and yet does not give birth. And this is what Reish Lakish said in the name of Bar Kapara. Closing up is stated with regard to rain, and closing up is likewise stated with regard to woman. Now we're going to see a bunch of comparisons. Ne'emra atzira bisha. So the word atzar is found both regarding heavens, but also with women. Ki atzor atzar Adonai be'ad kol rechem. Let's see. Oh, I've got a lot. Sorry, I haven't been paying attention to the chats. Oh, okay. So, sorry. Okay, so I'm a little behind here with these comments. I mean, with these chat comments. So the question, Ezekiel, a marten. You read the notes. Okay, so you know what the marten is, like a weasel. Does that apply to the... Oh, okay. All right. Seriously, now, what does the suffering of the entire people of Israel mean? Does the logic of the merit of the suffering of the innocent extend to Israel as suffering on behalf of the world? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how much the rabbis are always in tune with the rest of the world. Sometimes Israel, when they talk about Israel, they mean the whole world, but it's still from a very Israel-centric point of view. Like the whole world is focused on what Israel's needs are. And sometimes I think they are specifically concerned exclusively with Israel. They're not really focused on the rest of the world. Okay. So let's keep going on. Ne'emar leida be'isha v'ne'emar leida be'shamim. So the word leida is found both regarding a woman, v'tahar v'teled ben, that's from Genesis 30, when in the case of Rachel, v'ne'emar leida be'shamim, dechtiv v'holide v'hitzmicha. We've seen this verse too, from Isaiah. The rain comes down, the snow from heaven, and does not return there, except it waters the earth and causes it to give birth and bud. And lastly, ne'amar pikida be'isha v'ne'amar pikida b'kshamim. Ne'amar pikida be'isha dechtiv v'aranai pakad et sarah v'ne'amar pikida b'kshamim v'dechtiv bakarata ha'aretz v'tishokekeha. Rabata asrena peleg Elohim malemayim. So in the case, God remembered, here he's translated as remembered. JPS translated took note of, visited Sarah. This is where they get in the, I don't know if it's the one we have in our prayer book, but where they add the imahot in the Amidah. Some versions have it that it's Magain Avraham Ufoked Sarah. And the reason they're using Poked is because of this verse. God Pakad et Sarah. And also here, Pakarata ha'aretz v'tishokekeha. You've remembered the earth, or you've took note of the earth, and you watered it, greatly enriching it with a pool of God that is full of water. Okay, so now we're going to take this verse. Wait a minute, well, what is Peleg Elohim Alemayim? Tana Kamin Kuba Yesh Barakia, Jemimena Geshamim Yotzin. That there's this pool, this gathering of water up in the heavens. Kuba is like a little room. In this case, he translates it as a vault in the sky, out of which the rain falls. So it's kind of like, and I mentioned in the notes that I sent out, this is the image that we're given in the creation story is God divides the waters, right? So some of the waters go above, those are the shamayim, and then there's waters below, which are the mayim, the oceans. And so you have this water, basically like a big container of water up in the heavens, and when it rains, that's where the rain comes from. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, ma'idechtiv im leshevet im la'artso im lechesed yamtziehu. Im leshevet b'harim u'gvalot im lachesed yamtziehu le'artso b'sadot u'chrachmim. What is the meaning of that which is written? Whatever he commands them upon the face of the habitable world, whether it is for correction or for his earth or for mercy, that he causes it to come. Okay, another verse from Job. So when it says im leshevet, that means that if people are judged favorably, again, the word shevet, he translated here as correction. Shevet is, a staff, right? It's the in Psalm 23, when the person says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So it's because they bring correction, the rod. So if whether it is for the rod means that if people are judged favorably, the rain will fall on the mountains and on the hills. And the phrase la artso here in the verse indicates that if they have been judged for mercy, lechesed, he will cause it to come for his earth on the fields and on the vineyards. All right, so according to this reading, it's either or. Im l'shevet, if it's for correction, then it falls on the hills up above. But if you've done well, then it comes right to you directly in the fields and in the valleys. The alternative is whether it is for im l'shevet le'ilanot. If it's for shevet, then the rain comes for the trees. And shevet here, again, playing with the word shevet. Shevet is a rod, and it can come from wood, right? You make it out your rod out of wood. So im l'shevet, the rain comes for wood, for trees. Im la'artso, for the seeds on the earth. Im la'chesed yamtziehu borot shichin umarot. And if for chesed, it comes into the cisterns to fill up. And here, the different reading of it is, the problem with this verse is they didn't, the verse has l'shevet, l'chesed, la'artso, 3 examples, but the Shmuel Bar Nachmani's first translation doesn't make use clearly of all 3 possibilities, shevet, chesed, artso, and so the alternative phrase uses each one to show that certain types of rain will benefit certain parts of the earth. Okay, let's go to the last piece here. The Gemara, okay, B'yamei Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani. Oh, this is appropriate for our times. Hava kafna umotana. Okay, he was a kafna and a motana. A kafna is a famine, a motana is a plague. And the sages said, what should we do? Should we pray for mercy for 2 troubles, both the famine and the plague? And that's not possible. We'll find out in a moment why. It's improper to pray for the alleviation of 2 afflictions at once. Rather, we should pray for mercy for the plague, and we'll suffer the famine. And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said, no, you got it wrong. Pray for mercy for the famine, because when God will then answer and provide food, he's not going to let the plague wipe everybody out. What's the point of providing food for people if they're all going to die? So therefore, do one and you'll get a secondary benefit. But minalan delo mitzalenan atarte. How come you can't pray for 2 things simultaneously? So they bring in 2 verses, one from Ezra, one from Daniel, that suggest we prayed for this one thing. So we fasted and beseech for our God for this one thing. Whatever other troubles the people had, they didn't focus on. And in Eretz Yisrael, in the West, they had a different, they used this verse from Daniel, that they might ask mercy of the God of heaven concerning this secret. This secret, it may be inferred that there is another trouble about which they did not pray. And then we have Bimei Rabbi Zera, Gazur Shmada, Ugzur de la Lametav B'Taanita. So they had a real problem. In the days of Rabbi Zera, there was a decree, religious persecution, which decreed against the Jews. And the decree was they couldn't fast. So now you had a problem. You need to be able to fast to get God to pay attention to your prayer, but you can't fast, so how's God going to listen? So Rabbi Zera's solution was nikable ilavan ulechi batel shmada liyetvei. So what we'll do is we'll promise that we'll fast. We'll take the fast upon ourselves. We won't do it because there's a decree against it. And then we'll pray that that this religious persecution should be annulled, and we'll observe the fast afterwards. Amrile minalacha. How do you know we can do this? Amarle dichti vayomer elai al tira Daniel ki min hayom arishon asher natata et livcha lahavin ulehitanot lifnei Elohecha nishmain divarecha. Because from this verse, Daniel, fear not, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to fast before your God, your words were heard. So Daniel hadn't even finished the fast, hadn't even started the fast, but just taking upon himself the fast allowed the prayers to be heard. And I think their note here told us that Daniel, somewhere in the, or was it here? No, I think it was somewhere in the notes that Daniel fasted for 21 years. It's a long time.
So what did a fast mean at that time?
Well, usually it means at least fasting from all day long, no eating during the day, from sun up to sun till it's dark outside.
So you can eat at night.
Right, so you would eat at night. It's like the Ramadan fast.
That makes 21 days seem a little
Sure,
more.
21 years.
21, a little more.
21 years, yeah. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, afilu shanim kishnei Eliyahu v'yardu geshamim b'arvei Shabbatot, inan ela siman kala. So now we turn to rain, and Rabbi Yitzchak said, even in the years like the years of Elijah, when God decreed that no rain would fall, if rain falls on Shabbat Eve, it is nothing other than a sign of a curse. So now sometimes it's not so great when it rains. This is the other side of the coin. Hainu de Amar Rabba Bar Shela, kashe yoma de mitra ki yoma de dina. Rainy days is difficult as a day of judgment. And Amar Meimar ilo ditzrich livriyata be'einan rachame umatlin lei. Were it not for the fact that rain is needed by people, we would pray for mercy and annul it because of all the nuisances that rain causes. Okay, so some people don't like rain. I suppose if you live in the city, it's not as helpful to you as if you're a farmer. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, shemesh b'Shabbat tzedakah la'ani'im. So here's another example. When it doesn't rain on Shabbat and it's sunny out, it is an act of kindness for poor people. Why? Well, it could be that here he says they enjoy the outdoors without suffering from the cold. Okay, so that's one good thing. As it is stated, but for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing on its wings. We also saw, does it come? Somewhere it was about that also causes hardship for their stomach because they eat so good on Shabbat, they never eat during the week, that they have distress in their digestive system, and the sun helps heal them. Rabbi Yitzchak further said, the day of the rains is great as even a pruta in one's pocket is blessed on it. That is to give the rain of your land in its due time and to bless all the work of your hands. So rain is a good thing because it increases your wealth. And then apropos of Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Eina bracha mitzuya. Oh, this is a really interesting one. I thought this was very fascinating. Eina bracha mitzuya ela b'davar hasamui mina ayin. Rabbi Yitzchak said, a blessing is found only in an object that is hidden from the eye, not in something that's visible to all, as public miracles are exceedingly rare. And it's stated, and again, playing with the sound of words, Yitzav Adonai itcha et habracha be'asamecha. The Lord will command your blessings upon you in your barns or in your storehouses. But asamecha sounds like samui, which means hidden. Likewise, in the school of Rabbi Yishmael, it is taught a blessing is found only in an object that is not exposed to the eye. The Lord will command his blessing upon you in your barns. Again, that same root, that same verse. So we'll finish up with that today. My question to you is, why is that? What's the meaning of that?
The two things I got, one of them is about rain being a curse on Shabbat. On Shabbat, you can't work. So if it rains before, you can't do anything with it. You can't carry from the well to go draw water. So you can, and then if it's going to be hot later, it's going to evaporate and you won't be able to benefit from it. If it rains too much, you can't trench your farmland and your crops might drown. So that is how I can see it as a curse. As far as the hidden miracle and stuff, public miracles take away faith because it's very obvious and everybody saw it. We were talking about the two miracles of Hanukkah. there's the public miracle is the oil, you know, because everybody, oh, it's very obviously this supernatural miracle. 1 day's worth of oil burned for 8. Then the hidden miracle was the military victory. Is it possible for a small guerrilla force to overcome a regular army? Yeah, but it's very rare. So that's like the hidden miracle. And that one invokes more faith because while it's possible, it's so rare that if it happens, oh my goodness, that's something very amazing. You know, so I think that's why it's more important, the hidden miracles, because those are the ones where it might have happened, but something sort of pushed it over the edge. And, you know, its importance that way.
Okay, good. All right. Anybody else? Why are miracles the only good the only miracles that we see are the only miracles we can appreciate really are the hidden miracles? Something that's hidden from the eye.
Oh, big public miracles can make you want to brag about it. Like I was so amazing. I got blessed with a pole, you know, that everybody can see and everybody can, you know, oh, look at he did something amazing. He got all this extra stuff versus something small like I managed to find my car keys. And get to work on them,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
Yeah,
I was thinking about Torah, and that they were saying that Torah reveals itself like a woman who was veiled just for a moment to her suitor and all that. So something that's hard to discern is valued much more somehow. I don't know. I'm still working through that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's oh, Brandon, you want to share?
Yeah, sorry, I've been multitasking today, but hi. The related to both of those last comments, Nate's and Judy's, the idea of the intimacy of the hidden miracle, just a certain I don't know, it suggests something that's more about favor than about boasting or pride. It's more about the you know, the feeling of love rather than the feeling of being like, you know, overconfident.
I like that. Right. Yeah. Right. If it's something that's special to you that you notice, well, that it's that's a good. So does hidden from the eye mean that it's something that just you recognize because it's not out there publicly, which does, I think, absolutely relate to intimacy. Like, oh, it's God's helping me out. I really appreciate it. It's just me and you, God. Or is hidden from the eye mean like you don't realize that it was a miracle until after the fact, like you weren't aware of it, but then you say, oh my goodness, this was so miraculous. That kind of a thing, you know, you thought your car didn't work, so you couldn't make the trip you were going to make, but then that day it snowed 10 inches, so you would have been stuck on the highway, but now you realize, oh, it was a miracle that my car didn't work. You know, that kind of a thing. Only after the fact do you realize that it was a miraculous a benefit to you. Either one, I think those are both. I think it's just very telling that the rabbis, yeah, there's a sense of humility there, that and maybe protection. Hey, don't expect public miracles. That's not how God works. The splitting of the Red Sea, that happened in the Bible, but in our world, miracles happen either privately or we recognize it was a miracle after the fact. We don't even recognize that it was a miracle unless we want to see it that way. I remember when I was a kid, the rabbis trying to explain to us, you know, how these things work in the modern world. So one rabbi's explanation was that if the 67-day war, the 6-day war, if it was in biblical times, you would have had this language like the splitting of the Red Sea. Oh my goodness, it's so obvious that God was doing this miracle, but in our world, it's you know, it was the Israeli army being prepared, having strategy, having, committing themselves to fight for each other, whatever. But so we don't see it as a miracle. We see it as just kind of natural occurrence. So that's another possibility that in our world, the world we live in, when you ask, how come God doesn't do miracles for us? Well, the answer is because it's only samuiminayan. It's only, the miracles are still happening. They don't happen the way they do in the Bible. So it's almost like a protective for the rabbis in explaining why things don't happen the way they did according to the Torah. All right, very good. Well, this is great. This was interesting stuff. I think really good stuff is coming up. The next couple of pages, I think that if I remember correctly, because I'm a little ahead, there's a lot of good Agadah and really meaty stuff to talk about. So I'll send out the notes starting this week for page 9. And hope everybody has a good day.
40 times?
Yeah, 40 times. Yes. I'd like to see you, Brandon. I want you to be more prepared. Oh, and Ezekiel asked a question. Yes, Ezekiel, it's so funny, Ezekiel, you mentioned that, right? There are 3 things that come through suffering to the Jewish people, and I can only remember the 2 that you remembered. The land of Israel and the Torah. I'll have to look it up. What's the third one? The third, land of Israel, Torah, and maybe Messiah. I think it might be Messiah. The coming of the Messiah might be number 3 that comes to the Jewish people through suffering. But yeah, so we have a lot. Look, we Jews are good at knowing about suffering. So okay, all right. Have a good week. Take care, everybody.
Today, by the way, for everybody, is the last day for the Chinese food drive-through. So
Right,
if anybody
yeah.
hasn't ordered yet, Lori would like to remind everybody.
Okay, or
Your
at least
last-
donate. Even if you
Yeah.
don't have food, just don't make sure you donate.
Right.
Yeah.
Money is not good.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Gamliel, good. Nice to see you. Where are you? Where are you, Gamliel? Where are you living?
I live in Illinois.
Oh, in Illinois. Okay, very good. Well, I'm glad to know that we've got the Torah students from Illinois. All right.
Yeah.
Take care. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.